According to a recent report, the Tennessee Titans are interested in Alec Pierce and Wan'Dale Robinson in free agency, and those are exactly the kinds of names that they need to be going after. That and more on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, on today's bonus edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, we are going to talk about a recent report that connects the Tennessee Titans to two free agent wide receivers, Alec Pierce from the Indianapolis Colts and Wan'Dale Robinson from the New York Giants. I'm going to tell you why those are two great targets for the Titans, but they need to make sure that they don't get too busy looking at Pierce and miss out on Wan'Dale Robinson. Quite frankly, after those two guys, the rest of the options are just not that great. And before we get into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. Again, the combine is kicking off right now. We're going to have on-field drills throughout the rest of the week. Free agency right around the corner. The draft right after that. If you want to stay as up to date, as entertained, and as informed as a Tennessee Titans fan could possibly be, make sure that you stay locked in with the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world, Locked On Titans. But again, with that being said, we got a report here from Tony Pauline going over some interesting wide receiver options for the Tennessee Titans, Wan'Dale Robinson and Alec Pierce. And he said that the Tennessee Titans would be, quote, major suitors for Alec Pierce in free agency. And quite frankly, that makes a ton of sense. The wide receiver who broke out with the Indianapolis Colts this year is the exact kind of skill set that you would want to pair with a guy like Cam Ward. He's a deep threat who can get down the field. Obviously, we saw Cam Ward struggle a little bit with his deep accuracy. He's also a big frame guy with a big catch radius that can help Cam Ward if, maybe he's not pinpoint accurate all the time, which is something I've talked about with the gunslinger skill set that Cam Ward has. He's not going to be, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, pinpoint ball placement all the time. So having a guy with, long arms, can get down the field, make plays vertically, that would make a ton of sense. What I will tell you is Alec Pierce has me a little bit nervous. We saw the Tennessee Titans with their coaching search be the bridesmaid, not the bride, whether it be John Harbaugh, Jeff Hafley, Kevin Stefanski. And I don't want to see the Tennessee Titans basically get caught lacking looking at Alec Pierce, and then he ends up going back not only to a different team, but to a division rival in the Indianapolis Colts. So for me, I would hope that the Titans would be just as aggressive with a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, who Tony Pauline also reported that if the Titans can't sign Alec Pierce, that their next target would be Wan'Dale Robinson. And I honestly think that you could argue that Robinson would be just as good of a fit for the Tennessee Titans. A lot of you guys like to remind me about Chim DK, and I understand that Chim DK has the ability to play in the slot, but what I would say is that DK is more of a vertical slot. He's not a fantastic route runner in the short and intermediate areas at this stage in his career, whereas Wan'Dale Robinson can fit perfectly in that slot role in Brian Daboll's offense. And we don't need to guess. We don't need to project. We already know that. We saw Wan'Dale Robinson go for 90-plus catches the last 2 years with the New York Giants. We saw Wan'Dale Robinson go for 1,000 yards last year. So running those short option routes, running those inside out, you got outside leverage, I'm breaking inside. You got inside leverage, I'm breaking outside, reading the defense, and then making the right play. That is what Wan'Dale Robinson has already proven that he can do within the Brian Daboll offense. So I feel like it would be a really seamless fit to get that kind of guy back. And will the Titans bring back Calvin Ridley? If they do cut Calvin Ridley, I think a guy like Chim DK has the versatility to not only play in the slot, but also play that Z wide receiver position that Calvin Ridley would be vacating if he were released. So I think that there is still a seamless fit to use Chim DK within the offense. There's not going to be too much overlap between the skill set of those guys. I think it makes a ton of sense. Wan'Dale Robinson is very high on my list of a guy that the Titans can realistically go out and get in free agency. And quite frankly, again, I think that he is a more realistic target than a guy like Alec Pierce, who I simply don't believe that the Indianapolis Indianapolis Colts are going to let leave the building. So interesting report right there. Not really a shock. The Titans need help at wide receiver, but to see a little bit of confirmation there, that's good to hear. Now, one thing that I am concerned with is Robinson could stay in New York. Obviously, the New York Giants had a guy like Zay Flowers, so that's someone that John Harbaugh, a skill set that John Harbaugh would be familiar with, and I'm sure they're going to fight to bring him back. There is an expectation that Wan'Dale Robinson would get around $15 million APY. I would go higher than that to secure him. The Titans have enough money to overpay for some of these guys, and with how valuable I think that Robinson could be within the offense, I'm willing to overpay by a couple $1,000,000 per year to make sure that they bring him to Tennessee and not have him end up somewhere else or back in New York. So I think that would make a ton of sense. Those guys have me very intrigued. Again, I think Robinson more realistic than Pierce, but it makes complete sense. Now, the problem is after those two guys, the rest of the options, not quite as enticing, in my opinion. And there's definitely a drop down in terms of at least my excitement level for the remaining options. And we'll talk about what the Titans could be looking at if they do miss out on Pierce and Robinson right now. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There is something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. And I've got my number one pick for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft. And for me, I got to go with a classic grape, that Concord grape flavor. It's similar to like grape juice or candy. It's got a nice, soft, rounded sweetness, smooth, almost syrup-like fruit profile. It's consistent. It's straightforward taste. It's got that classic purple candy style finish. And I know that I've always been a big fan of anything, grape flavored growing up. Now, if I had to give you guys a sleeper, I'm going to keep pounding the table for the peach mango. It's got that ripe peach flavor on the first sip. And then the mango adds that tropical depth and sweetness underneath. It's a smooth, rounded fruit profile, slightly richer mouthfeel than some of the other citrus flavors as well, which I enjoy. It's a balanced tropical blend. It's how I would explain the peach mango there. But make sure that you find your new flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com, or you can find it on Amazon. Today's episode is also brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one between busy work days, cold winter nights, packed schedules, doing a million podcasts a day. Having an easy and reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated number one by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, quick lunches. It saves time and money. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position that you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, the skills, the experience, the location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of my show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and show support for my show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Titans fans, let's continue today's bonus edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Again, breaking down a recent report from Tony Pauline about the Titans' interested targets in free agency at wide receiver. Again, Alec Pierce, Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm quite frankly, just as interested in Wan'Dale Robinson as I am Alec Pierce. But the real problem for the Titans is after those two names, things get a little scary. I'm not as excited about the other options that would be available. I know that a lot of you guys love George Pickens, and that's not going to be an option for the Titans. Again, Mike Evans, is Mike Evans in the twilight of his career going to want to come play for the Tennessee Titans? I severely doubt it. Now, after Pierce and then after Robinson, you get to a guy like Romeo Doubs. And listen, Doubs is a good player in the NFL. But quite frankly, he's had some locker room issues in Green Bay that make me wonder whether he's a fit. Not only that, but this is a guy who's never gone over 800 yards in a single season in his career. He's had head injuries to the point where he has to wear the Guardian cap all the time. Like, you're taking a significant risk here. He's a guy who's had massive drop issues in his career. You guys got on my back about wanting Michael Pittman Jr. He's got 23 drops in 6 seasons. Well, a guy like Romeo Doubs has 25 drops in 4 seasons. So I don't see how you could hate on Michael Pittman Jr. and then say that you want Romeo Doubs. So Doubs would be the next likely option, and he is going to be available. He's not going to get re-signed by the Packers. But at the same time, do I really want to pay 14, 15 million? I know I said I'd be willing to overpay Wan'Dale Robinson to get him to Tennessee, but I don't know if I would be as willing to overpay a guy like Romeo Doubs to come to Tennessee. I don't think I would be willing to do that. $10 to $12 million per year, that would make sense. But listen, if Pierce goes back to the Colts and Robinson goes back to the Giants and Mike Evans only wants to play for a contender and Pickens is tagged, you're probably going to have to overpay for a guy like Romeo Doubs. And I just don't know that I feel comfortable doing that now. Maybe a guy like Jalen Naylor would make sense, but what are we talking about there at that point? A lot of you guys are screaming in the comments all the time. They need a number one wide receiver. And I keep telling you, number one wide receivers aren't available like that. That's not quite how it works. And you can't be screaming in the comments you want a number one wide receiver and then tell me that you want to go get Jalen Naylor. I mean, that just doesn't really add up to me. So again, I don't want the Titans to be caught holding the bag here, going after Alec Pierce, who's considered the better target, and then he ends up going back to Indy. I would like to see the Titans go after Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he's a perfect fit, and then you can go into the draft and you can look for maybe a bigger-bodied wide receiver to compete with Alec Manor for that X wide receiver spot, a Chris Brazzell, a Chris Bell, and you can wait for him to recover from the ACL. Ted Hurst, maybe later in the draft, would make a ton of sense. So I think there are a lot of good options for the Titans to do that, but already starting to hear some of these rumors about guys that they'll be interested in. And, it's not any breaking news to a lot of us that the Titans are going to be looking for wide receivers. But either way, got Ruben Bain, David Bailey talking at the NFL Combine on Wednesday. I'm going to head to those interviews now. Mike Borgonzi later this afternoon, and I'll be back tonight to give you guys the scoop on everything that was said and everything that you need to know. That's going to do it for today's bonus edition of Locked On Titans. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and again, this was Locked On Titans.